we are two old entrepreneurs that about a year and a half came up with an idea, and we worked on it. And sure enough, it's cooking, and we got a lot of attention. And it's really an idea that it could be repeated in all the African countries. We will start in Egypt. We have a partner. Unfortunately, there is a lot of details because we are in the process of the FRA, our regulator, to establish the fund. Details of the funds will not be something to discuss. But let me start by quoting the Egypt National Climate Change Strategy 2050, that Egypt really is one of the most populated nations in the Middle East and Africa. And the country is therefore highly vulnerable to the effects of climate change, and adapting to the adverse impact of the climate change really is an imperative necessity for us. Air pollution costs Egypt about $47 billion. So multiple government-led programs are development, finance, and private sector support. However, more measures are really needed, and the challenges are big. Egypt is investing in urban transport networks. The renewable comprise an estimate of 10% of the energy mix. The government is aiming 42% by 2035, which is not, of course, an easy task, but I think it will be achievable. COP27 is on our doorsteps. I think the strategic imperative of COP27 is implementation, as I heard it from Dr. Samir as well. Meeting the commitments made in Paris and Glasgow to the developing economies to mobilize at least 100 billion per year from public and private sources dedicated to meeting climate target is now widely questionable ahead of COP27. Of course, these commitments are meant to finance both mitigation and adaptation for the developing economies. Of course, with the current global economic landscape, with the inflation, rising cost of finance, fiscal tightness, and all the problems that everybody is facing, the division of shares between the public and private sector is not really something. Realistic progress in COP27 from the private sector, and that for adaptation, of course, should come from the public ones, as Dr. Samir mentioned as well. The idea is that financing for the mitigation makes business sense, sourced privately, and to the adaptation. The idea, when it comes to Sharif and I as MGM, we have with us Avance Capital. They are a private equity fund, and we came up with an idea that it's the first fund of its kind for generating carbon offsets or carbon emissions. The investors will receive carbon offsets, which they can either claim to meet their obligation or trade against a monetary value in open markets. The carbon offsets allow organizations to achieve net zero emissions by offsetting emissions that they can reduce by other means. The fund will aim to invest in projects in Egypt, and as such, all carbon offsets will be made in Egypt. Of course, it can be replicated again in Africa, in any other country. We are planning to have two parallel funds, one in Egypt, based in Egypt, in Egyptian pound, and the other one is in dollars, and it will be domiciled outside of Egypt. We are looking to finance 12 to 15 projects, raising money, maybe a project. Let me turn the video off. Maybe it will be okay. We were seeking to finance 15 projects, as in fuel switching, carbon capture, adoption of clean energy. I will give this. I will let Sharif talk a little bit about the pipeline, because he's the one who really worked on it. The project are structured to pay back the financing in the form of VARs only, or VARs in cash, depending on the financing arrangement made for each investment. The fund will follow the gold standard. This is something that the three speakers talked about, the gold standard. For the VAR, the value is in tons, but it will be multiplied by the price. The price is determined at the time of delivery of the VARs to the investors in the fund. And it's worth mentioning that the Egyptian Stock Exchange is in the process of establishing a carbon offset commodity exchange, which can also be one of the options for a benchmark to determine the price of the VAR certificates, which is the big challenge that we have to solve very soon.